Whee! Whee! I'm in a spinny chair. I'm in a spinny chair. Hello! Hi there, guys. I'm a little low on the camera today, but don't worry about it. You get to see more of my big forehead. Anyways, welcome to my Geek review. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Amazing Spider-Man. And it is an awesome, awesome film. I just got home from seeing it. I went and took my kids this afternoon to the film. They enjoyed it very much too, and I'm very happy to say that this movie is definitely living up to the hype and the anticipation surrounding it. I've heard a few people kind of nitpicking the film, which makes me kind of sad because I felt it is a really excellent film, aside from a few minor things here and there, which don't actually detract from the film viewing, in my opinion. I think it's a really awesome movie. You need to go see it in the theaters, and it's almost better than The Avengers. Now, for a little bit of history, for those of you who have been living under a rock the last 10 years, the first Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire, directed by Sam Raimi, came out in 2002, 10 years ago. And in that time, we got to see Spider-Man 2 and then Spider-Man 3. Now, while Spider-Man 3 is generally acknowledged as the train wreck of the trilogy, with the worst story, and Spider-Man 2 is generally acknowledged as one of the best superhero films ever made, I didn't really like any of the Spider-Man films as Spider-Man films. The first film I felt was okay. I didn't really like it per se, but then Spider-Man 2 vastly improved on it by being a much better story and a much better superhero film. We don't even need to go into Spider-Man 3 because that movie's a stinking pile of shit that should never have been produced, but it got produced anyway. It was overproduced. That's basically what happened. The reason I don't like the Maguire films is because I feel like they didn't portray Spider-Man correctly at all. He's a mensch. He's an airhead. He's kind of a dipshit who do I forgot shit again. He doesn't really feel real. He doesn't really feel like Peter Parker, Spider-Man, who was this guy who life kind of steps on him, but he's a generally good guy and has to fight with himself and with the weight of responsibility of doing the right thing. He's a genuinely good guy who does the right thing, and he gets shit all over because he does that. In those Raimi films, he's just kind of like, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and I never cared for the characterization, but enough about that. Let's get on to The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, the film, first of all, hits the tonality perfectly. It's not really a grim and gritty reboot, like I've actually heard some people lament. I didn't really get that sensation from it at all. I don't get grim and gritty. I don't get darker or more harder edged. In fact, the only thing I got out of it was it's a little bit more of a sense of realism. There's a lot of light moments. There's a lot of comedic moments. And there's a lot of tragic moments as well. There's death. There's some fairly violent scenes. Spider-Man gets the shit kicked out of him on more than one occasion. But the film isn't dark or grim or gritty. It's very much grounded in a very realistic world. I won't say very, very reality-based, but it's much more realistic and less comic booky than the previous Spider-Man films. I feel like they did learn a lot from the Batman Begins style reboot, where they took Batman and put him into a realistic world. They didn't necessarily take Batman, I felt, and made him darker or more grim and more gritty. They just made him more realistic. They put him into a more defined world held together by the rules of reality. And that's what The Amazing Spider-Man does, is it takes real people and puts them into a comic book universe, but then crafts everything based around real rules and the way that people would actually really act. And I really appreciated that. The best scenes are with, well, I'm actually pretty much anything that Andrew Garfield is in, because he nails his character. His acting performance is spot on and absolutely just a breathtaking revelation of an acting performance. But then you put him and you put Emma Stone in the same room, and you have them act with each other, the chemistry is fantastic. They feel like a real awkward teenage couple, just kind of learning how to deal with themselves and these new emotions that they're crafting for each other. And it's fantastic stuff. Oh, God. All the acting here is spot on, and a lot of it is due in part to some great dialogue, like very realistic dialogue. Um, Uncle Ben has great lines, and he's very encouraging, and he felt like a real parent. He didn't feel like this monument that Spider-Man ends up building himself around philosophically and then carrying that tragic weight throughout the remainder of his life. Ben feels like an inspiration. He feels like that kind of person where you have them in your life, and then when you lose them, you remember them, and you remember what they said to you. It's not just the lines that Ben says, and it's not just the fact that he dies that spurs Peter Parker onward as Spider-Man. It's the more of like the inspiration that Uncle Ben crafts as a human being, as a real person, and it's that sensation of Peter Parker letting him down in a moment of, I'm not going to say weakness, but what even in the course of the film felt like a justifiable moment, but then ultimately leads to Parker having to do the right thing. A good guy who does the right thing and taking on that weight of, with great power comes great responsibility. The acting, so all the characters, I felt, all the acting is really, really well done. The story is great. Oh man, it's so hard to say like what specifically I liked. There is this undercurrent of menace from Oscorp, which is Norman Osborn's corporation, who we learn that Peter Parker's dad used to work for, and Richard Parker's colleague Kurt Connors still works for them, and he's trying to find a genetic way to cure diseases through cross-species genetic manipulation, meaning taking certain traits from certain animals, combining them with human DNA, and poof! For example, lizards have the ability to regenerate their body parts at will because they're accustomed to losing their tails and regrowing them. Okay, basic science is sound. We get a lot of pseudoscience masquerading as real science, and it works. It works for the film, and basically Kurt Connors' story and his aspirations and his motivations are sound. He's not just some guy who had some tragic accident happen and then he goes and goes crazy. It really does feel like what happens to him actually drives him to the point of insanity without really... man, it's just... The Lizard worked for me, and I read in some places that people were confused about whether or not they were supposed to feel sorry for the character or whether we're supposed to hate the character. And I really don't feel like we're supposed to hate the character, but I do sense the menace of the character and that we are supposed to take him seriously as a threat. Because what Connors does is he's missing an arm, and he's always sought to try and perfect the weaknesses in humanity. And ultimately, because Norman Osborn, completely off-screen in this film, but one of his aides tells Connors, Norman Osborn is dying, and what we need right now is we need a cure for him so that he won't die, and we've been funding your research for 15 years, so come on up with something. The problem is that Connors can't come up with something, because the particular equation necessary for making this cross-species genetic manipulation to work was all based on Richard Parker's research that he did in the past. What's revealed to us at the beginning of the film is that someone broke into Richard Parker's study, tried to get at his work, but Mr. Parker and his wife decide to take their young son Peter. They drop him off with his Uncle Ben and Aunt May, and they disappear to parts unknown. But then it is revealed later in the film that the two of them actually died in a plane crash, and it's heavily implied that Oscorp had something to do with it. So we've got a lot of tension surrounding the mystery of what were Peter's parents up to? What was it, or who broke in? Why is this all important? And that is ultimately the beginning of Peter's quest for answers, for truth, and on his road to becoming Spider-Man. The course of the film does take a lot of coincidental things that all kind of sort of nebulously orbit each other, and then, oh, this over here is related to this, and this over here is related to this. For example, Gwen Stacy, the love interest in the film, she happens to be Peter Parker's main attraction. He likes her. He has a picture of her on his computer. She is one of the student aides at Oscorp, and she happens to be working for Professor Connors. Okay, cool. That works for me. Parker likes her, and she happens to be working for the guy who used to work with Peter's dad, so it's all kind of interconnected. Okay, cool. No big deal. Then it turns out that Gwen Stacy's dad is also the chief of police, who, once Peter becomes Spider-Man, is in charge of the manhunt for trying to track down Spider-Man. So the connections between everybody, like Gwen Stacy, she works for Kurt Connors, and her dad is the chief of police. The chief of police is trying to hunt Spider-Man. Kurt Connors is the Lizard, and so like everybody's all kind of interconnected in this film in the way that, you know, sometimes you just got to take that coincidence and what's the word I'm looking for? Suspension of disbelief. You kind of need a little bit of suspension of disbelief that all these people can be like all this connected. I mean, you know, maybe there's some like underlying guiding hand or whatever. It's a bit of a stretch. That's why I called it a realistic setting for the film, because it's a little bit of a stretch. But it works because of the way that these people interact with each other. Watching Peter interact with Gwen Stacy's dad, talking about Spider-Man, with Peter knowing he's Spider-Man, and Gwen Stacy's dad not knowing he's Spider-Man, talking about how Spider-Man's a vigilante and he needs to be hunted down, and Peter trying to pseudo-defend Spider-Man is really good for the acting, the screenplay. It works. There's a scene that I really, really liked with Peter and Kurt Connors, and they're talking about, this is after the Lizard's first appearance, and then he goes back down into Kurt Connors' form, because he's not really, what's the word? The serum that Connors uses to try and grow back his arm to test it out. And I'm jumping all over the place, but I really liked this movie. Forgive me. There's a scene I really liked where Connors and Peter are talking. Now, they've already met as Peter and as the Lizard. They fought on the New York Bridge, George Washington Bridge. They fought on a bridge. I don't know much about New York, I'm sorry. But they're talking to each other, and Peter's like, so what do you know about lizards? And Connors is immediately like, what makes you ask that question? Oh, well, no reason, because at this point, he has no reason to suspect that Connors is the Lizard. Like, no reason at all. He has no idea whatsoever. He's just popping into Oscorp to ask this question. But then it's just the wordplay, the back and forth. God, it's good. Man, it is good. This is a good script. It takes some coincidental things and it takes a few things and kind of manipulates something and goes, well, this will work, and it makes it work, and that is the mark of a good screenplay. It's also the mark of a good movie when you can take something that kind of makes you suspend your disbelief a little bit, but you actually do, and it works, and it fits. There's a fantastic moment when Spider-Man needs to race across the city, but he's been hounded by the cops, and he got shot in the leg, and he needs to keep on going, but he's just kind of falling all over the place. And there's a moment in the movie where he saves this little boy, and that little boy's father happens to be a construction worker. The construction worker sees Spider-Man trying to get to the Oscorp building to stop the lizard. He sees this on TV, and he goes, "Hey guys, listen. I know that they ordered an evacuation. This is what I want you to do." So they set up a series of cranes throughout the city. I guess they're already there because they're always doing construction in Manhattan. But what they do is they line them all up so that Spider-Man is able to web swing from one to the other and keep on going. And it's this moment that when you take the gloriously heroic score and you take the heroism of the moment and the way he keeps pushing, and it just works. That is what I loved about this film, is that it takes some things that a lesser film would have felt manipulative, and it makes them work, and it makes them feel organic, despite the fact that it's like, oh, I saved this kid who happens to be the son of this construction worker who now sees me on TV, who's now setting up all these cranes so that I can web swing across the city to go save the rest of the city from the lizard. You hear that, and you go, oh, wow, yeah. How does it really work? You watch the movie, and in the moment, it makes it work. And that is what I consider to be a sign of a good movie. When it takes something that shouldn't work, and it makes it work, and goddamn, is this a movie that does that. This is a very smart movie that, yes, asks you to go, come along with me and trust me on this one, and you go for it, because it just works. Man, oh, I'm just kind of fanboying all over the place. I'm stretching to think of any other particular scenes, like Peter discovering his powers, the pitfalls of super strength. You need to see this. Just, if anything else, the scene where he is getting used to the idea of having super strength can't ruin that scene for you. But when you see it, you will be dying, because it's hilarious, and it's one of the best takes on discovering super strength I've ever seen. This film, his discovery of powers, is so natural and organic and accident-laden, and the more he gets it, the better it is. It's just a really wonderful turn of events. And you know what? Here's what I love. Spider-Man in full costume. I don't think he shows up until it's over half an hour. It's like an hour. At the very most, it's an hour in. But it takes a while for him to get there. And the process of him, again, the process of him getting a costume and choosing to wear a costume also feels very organic. It's this whole process. And it's just a great script. It's a great film, great acting, great direction. I really love James Horner's score, although my only caveat with that is his score did at times feel like James Horner's superhero theme rather than Spider-Man theme. It doesn't, it's great and it's grand, and he does, man, oh, I'm a big fan of film scores. I'm a big fan, and I really appreciated the scene where the lizard is coming into Oscorp, and he's walking around, and Gwen Stacy is hiding and trying to stay out of sight, and there is this fantastic off-tune piano chord that keeps striking, and I think it like 2 or 3 times in the background, and it just threw me because it kept me on the edge of my seat. The score did such a great job. It's not a traditional James Horner score. I think the only superhero movie he's done a film score for is The Rocketeer back in 1992, and this has many echoes of that. It has a lot. James Horner is a guy who recycles a lot of work in his film scores, but it's all fantastic. It all works here. this film was almost better than the Avengers. In fact, I cannot really say which one I like more because they are very much on par in my mind. I've seen Avengers twice. I've only seen Spider-Man once. I just got home from it, but it's definitely worth going to see a second time. I don't know about IMAX 3D. I don't know about any of that. But what I can tell you is that this film is worth seeing because this is so natural, so organic, so smart. You are willing to go along for the ride because it is a ride, and it's a great ride, and it's very emotional, and I really genuinely felt for the character, not because it was manipulative, because it just felt real. It felt real, and that is what we needed from a Spider-Man movie. We just needed it to feel real, and not like some schmuck who is out there with superpowers and great power comes great responsibility. It felt real and natural, which is weird talking about a guy in red and blue spandex ziplining across New York City. So there is a scene after the credits. Not entirely after the credits, but there's a first batch of credits, and then we get a little quick scene, and then after that you can leave the theater. But here's what I like about it. It doesn't answer every single question brought up in the film, but it answers all the questions pertinent to the story in this film. And that is what I didn't like about some of the movies leading up to the Avengers. Like, it felt like they were just films there to say, we're going to make an Avengers movie. Clearly they're saying there is more to this story. We have more Spider-Man on the way. And from what I've read, it's their intent to create a trilogy. But what they do is they answer all the questions that are pertinent to this 2-hour story that they've got here, and then they give you a little teaser saying, there's more to it, we'll see you next time. And that is good storytelling. You clearly want to make more, you want to bring more people in. It's just like that scene near the end of the Avengers where it's got, the ending sequence with Thanos, and that little cameo he does, it's enough to make you go, what are they going to do now? So, bottom line is, this is a great movie. This is a really great movie, and I am so looking forward to having this on my shelf, proudly displayed next to the Avengers, and I really sincerely hope that they can find a way to get this Spider-Man into the other Marvel universe, because I know they're talking about it. I know that right now there isn't much of a chance of it actually happening, but they want it to happen. And that to me speaks volumes of the fact that they even want it to happen. So, anyways, you guys, this is a great film. This is a much better film than the other Spider-Man movies that we got. I mean, it's better than Spider-Man 2, and that is one of the best superhero stories ever put down on film. But it's less comic booky, it's less manipulative, it's more real, organic, and actually tells a story without forcing you to endure anything. It's a pretty good. Oh, yeah, I really like this one. No, I really, 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 really like this one, and I really hope you guys go and see it too, and really like it for yourself. But anyways, I'm nearing that point where I just need to shut the fuck up and let you guys go see it. But this was my Geek review, and next time I come back with a My Geek review, I don't know, is there... I mean, I know I kind of ramble on and I do like half-hour rants about movies, but is there anything you guys want to see me review? I don't know who even watches this, but let's say you're a person watching this. You want to see me do a review on something? Okay, got a bunch of movies in my collection. I'm willing to go out and rent something, willing to go out and see something. I am also planning on doing a review, God help me, of 50 Shades of Grey at some point. Jesus Christ, I can't, nah. But I'll do it. Anyways, drop me a line and let me know if there's anything you'd like me to review. Till then, this has been my Geek Review.